don't love the game from a spread standpoint. So you are right. They're minus 200 on the money line, 4.5 point favorites at BetMGM. My first thought was actually to bet Dallas, Ken, because like the
Yeah, me
first
too.
four games of this, the first four games of the series, it's like if you're gonna give us almost two possessions, yeah, I'll take that team that we're getting almost two possessions with in Dallas. So that was my my first thought process. Ken, I'm gonna be honest with you. I think this thing might go up to 5.5 by the time tip off because I think a lot of people are going to go back to the Denver series and how Minnesota dropped the first two games at home against Denver, came back for that game six and won by 45. And I think a lot of people are going to look at this and they're like, surely Minnesota's like not going to lose three straight home games in a row. Like they figured something out. Like you said, Towns is playing well. Edwards is playing well. The longer that they can keep Luka in the series, like maybe he can wind down more and more. Like they're going to talk themselves into all these things. But I don't love any play, but if I had to make one, like it would have to be Dallas. Like all these games have been 3 or 4 or 5 points. Like they've all come down to the wire. So I think you got to take the team with the plus 4.5. I also am wondering if, and with me doing the show here the last 3 or 4 weeks or so, that I like correlating teams with totals and finding
You're
if we
big
get
on
an
this.
edge there.
You think you have one here?
And like the first four games of the series, the three that Dallas has won, the overs hit. And then Minnesota wins last night, and we finally get an under in the series. The problem, though, is all those games that Dallas won, Minnesota very easily could have won if they made some shots at the end. So it's not like I look at it and say Minnesota can't win a game like, 115, 112 against Dallas because they were right there. They easily could have won those games. I just think it is interesting. We've gotten four games, and like all the games that Dallas has won, the over has hit. And maybe it does translate because Dallas, they have to win games in which Luke and Kyrie play well. And Minnesota obviously being the best defensive team in the NBA, like that's what they need to lean on. Maybe they found something with Kyle Anderson being the primary defender on Luka. Draymond was talking about that last night at the end of the game. Like there wasn't as much Jaden McDaniels, and Luka had one of the worst games, had the worst game so far in the series, and he still had a triple double. So it's not like he played terrible. It's just he played so well in the first three games. But that also is in the back of my mind. It's like I like Dallas plus the points. Like, is the over worth to play at 209.5? I don't think I'm going to bet. It's just something I'm monitoring. But to answer your original question, for me, like Dallas plus the points probably be the play.
Yeah, I'm really curious what happens to this market as we go. Right? Let's say Lively's ruled out tomorrow. I mean, there's no way it's going down. I think probably it goes five everywhere. Maybe becomes the right answer to the question. Do we see 5.5s? That would very strongly resemble the movement and market that we had for game two when it was like, well, Minnesota
Yep.
lost the first at home. Surely they're going to come back with a better effort. And they just lost the game outright. And you know how I feel about this stuff. This isn't a perfect one of those, but it's like, when you start to get this mania around like, well, this is just going to happen. And like, it's like, well, why is the market moving like that? I don't know, vibes and an injury to a bit player center who maybe is impactful, but also isn't one of the best three players on the team. Like, okay. That's then I raise my eyebrows a little bit when I see stuff like that. When you see this movement out on a team and it doesn't feel like, aside from Lively's injury, and maybe I'm just underrating the impact of that injury, aside from Lively's injury, nothing fundamentally has changed. Like, it's the same players, it's the same everything. Minnesota has not been able to get away from Dallas at all in these games. They have not been able to get away from them. Why are they going to get away from him in this game?
Noops, any player props that you like in this series now that we've kind of seen four games and we've seen each team make adjustments and we know that, like you said, the Mavs are dealing with the Lively injury. Any props that you're looking to attack in game five?
Yeah, the aforementioned Carl Anthony Towns. I'm just going to continue to play his points under. It's been one of the easiest clicks. Him and Jason Tatum, for whatever reason, are not scoring a lot of points here in the conference finals. Tatum's done, but we still get to continue to play Carl Anthony Towns. It's at 19.5, even some 20.5, a few different places, depending on where you look. But go ahead, continue to take those points under. Again, as I mentioned, he's shooting very poorly, even with that 9 for 13 in game four, still between 30 and 35%, sub 30% from three-point land, and actually plays worse at home. He's one of the few players, if you go look at his splits career, and especially this season, about almost 3.5 points per game less at home than he is on the road. So give me Towns under his points.
On the Dallas side of things, Noops, and we can get into like thoughts on who's going to win the game too. But Kyrie doesn't play very well, and you brought up an interesting point with Lively. Actually, I knew that his on-off stuff was pretty good, but like I didn't realize maybe how good of a plus-minus player he was across the whole playoffs. Like maybe a really big deal. Like, is that partly to blame for why Luka and Kyrie didn't play well? Is that the kind of thing where in Game 5 on the road, maybe you would play under on Kyrie Irving, who again had like a prolonged period in this playoffs where he did absolutely nothing. So like it could totally happen. Again, it doesn't have to be like what the first few games were like. And for Luka, doesn't shoot particularly well, still gets a triple double, but the points weren't necessarily there like they were in a couple of the other games. Like, is Lively causing this where you want to play under, or is it I'm not sure, or is it no, I actually think like Luka's such a dominant player, I expect him to play better in Game 5?
I expect Luka to play a little bit better in Game 5. It's tough. He doesn't look 100%. You watch him running, and I say running, his feet really don't leave the ground very much over these last couple games, but he is able to kind of manage himself through. Kyrie is still kind of figuring it out here, but he continues to get better. Overall, I still like the Mavericks. I think that they win the series. I think that Minnesota, without Lively now, has a much better chance at home. I think we are going back to Dallas for Game 6 with the Mavericks. We'll close it up there.
I guess I'll ask you this, Ken, like outside of Tennessee and A&M, like of the teams that you have advancing to the College World Series, like who's the one that you look at and like feel the best about on your bracket, and then like looking at the odds market that you might think is like the best bet currently on the board?
Aside from the top two teams, I think was your question, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Duke or Oklahoma State. I would say Oklahoma State only because I would really like them a lot more against Clemson, Coastal, whatever. Like Duke, Florida State is just really tough. Even if I kind of think Duke's upside is more, and if they get past that and Omaha, and we see how those brackets break, then it could be interesting. But Oak State gets the easier path to Omaha just by virtue of the Super being easier, and their price is longer than Duke's is. So that's just those two factors alone. I like both, but I think Oklahoma State's really, really interesting.
Jake, how about yourself? Outside of Tennessee and A&M, what do you like the best?
I really badly want to say Oregon State, but being on the same side as A&M and OK State especially is just a real kick in the pants, and I hate that. But on the other side, I mean, I am really bullish on UNC, especially because they're going to be hosting through the Super. I like them. I like how they grade out, but I don't feel as strongly about that. If Oregon State could catch fire here, I like them a lot, but just being on the tougher side to me of the bracket just really stinks.
I like Duke, Oklahoma State, Mississippi State the best. Those are bets I'll be making for those teams to win their super regionals, and I like A&M too, just because of the price that we're getting. Ken, I agree with you. I don't think that they're getting viewed. I mean, they're not getting viewed as like Tennessee is, and I think there's value there to jump on them and lay the juice. So I like all that. All right, how about who do you guys like right now? If you had to pick a like championship game champion, who are some teams that you're looking at? Cam, we'll start with you.
I mean, if Tennessee didn't have this stupid black magic 1 seed thing attached to them, they're the cleanest. They just are. And yeah, maybe the 1 seed curse is a thing. Maybe that just speaks to volatility in the tournament. Teams that have great regular seasons being overrated. This Tennessee was certainly in this exact same situation a couple of years ago and lost to Notre Dame, didn't even make it to Omaha in that situation. So maybe there's something to that. Maybe there is. They are the cleanest candidate. And so if this is just like a bracket, and it's like you fill out the bracket for college basketball, you pick UConn because they're the best team, I have to pick Tennessee to win the tournament. I could pick Texas A&M and feel just as good about it. But I would say like those two, head and shoulders above everybody else. If I was to be like, all right, I don't want to pick those two, I would probably pick Duke if we're talking about a winner instead of Oklahoma State, even though I think Oklahoma State's like average elimination round is later because of the Super being easier. Duke's upside's probably a little bit more. So I'll say Tennessee wins, which I know is super chalky. But look, like they're just the cleanest candidate. Like, you know who wins this all the time? Like really good teams that host Supers, that are good, that play in this conference. And that's A&M too, to be fair. Either team won wouldn't surprise me. I'll say Tennessee.
All right. Ken likes Tennessee. Jake, how about you?
I'll say it's A&M. I really, really love this team. Part of that is the black magic curse that is on Tennessee and is a little scary. But
it's really wild.
I also just they
25
also
years, no
A&M
one seed.
checks a lot of the boxes too. Same conference, same star players. It's just I like them a ton. Whoever I will say, I'll get a little crazy and say that there's a little wackiness on the other side of the bracket. I'll say it's Miss State, Texas A&M, and A&M wins.
All right, I'm on Duke to win the whole thing. I really like this Duke team. Their pitching is awesome. If their bats wake up, I think John Shire. Obviously, I hate Duke basketball.
Hate
Duke
team.
basketball.
Yeah,
but their baseball team, I got nothing against them. So I think with their pitching, and obviously if they're able to make it to the College World Series, which we all think they will, I just think that playing in that big ballpark in Omaha, like it plays to pitchers, teams with a great pitching staff, and I think Duke can manufacture enough runs. Like you said, Tennessee, I mean, they're really good, but that stat is hard to ignore, that the number 1 overall seed hasn't won in 25 years. I think they match up with A&M, so I'll go Duke and Texas A&M, and I'll pick Duke to be the national champion. So betting them to win it all.